Thank you, Warren, and to all the IT. This wouldn't happen without Dharma Drum and Chant Center and all the centers that Shifu had created as being part of the backup, the fabric of this particular event. It's going back quite many decades now that Shifu was able to create a community. And it's wonderful to see some of you here. Many of you are new to me and friends to me and practitioners for all. And I'm very grateful. Thank you. Very grateful. So you saw in my description that this will be about the Paramitas. And I would like to discuss that. I'm very grateful that I have been asked to be part of this, and I'm very indebted to the teachers and to the community. And by being here tonight is my expression of thanks. It's also an expression of my own practice and my vow and my journey in Dharma. I chose the 6 Paramitas, and I'm seeing a lot of people, so I'm very grateful for that, that it's not just names, but I'd like to see how many of you already know about the Paramitas. Could you raise your hand, please? Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. I chose them because not only did they help me so much, but they are part of my daily practice. And I always bring that into my lectures because I feel I would not be able to speak unless I did have a daily practice. And I'll start now by saying that when I was living in Virginia, and I do live there 6 months of the year, I went to a book club at the local library. And it was quite unusual in the sense that we didn't all read the same book. The directions were to bring our favorite book. And that was quite unusual because now there were maybe 8 or 10 people attending. And so we didn't hear one story, we heard 8 or 10 stories, and we shared the contents and all of that. And it was quite inspiring and also very encouraging. I mean, we were able to maybe share, and somebody else would be reading the book that we found very helpful. I'm doing that this evening. I am using Shifu's book. It was a free book given back in 2000 actually, and it's the 6 Paramitas. I'll be referring to this. And because of a study group that I'm in, this was recommended. The Practice of Perfection by Robert Aitken Roshi. I'll be using that as well. Before I do that, I'd like to trace how I encountered the teachings of the Paramitas. I took a class with Master Sheng Yen, as Warren introduced, and as much as I did my best and I was very encouraged by him and his behavior and his own vows were very, very powerful, I was also feeling very, very confused. When I attended his lectures, the first one I attended was the Heart Sutra. And I have to say that from the beginning, it confused me very much. Emptiness is form, form is emptiness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. I just couldn't wrap my mind about what is this about? How is this a spiritual practice? Even the 4 vows, to hear that I was to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I mean, what did that mean? How innumerable? Never even heard the word before. To cut off endless fixations? How? Limitless approaches to Dharma and attaining supreme Buddhahood. I mean, I was just very, very overwhelmed and just unable to grasp what it was that I was able to do. Even the 4 noble vows, there was suffering. I thought, well, no, there's not that much suffering. There's a release of suffering. Okay, well, that's good news. There was a path and a cessation. There was heaps of just not understanding, and the path just seemed insurmountable. This was a time when the Chan Meditation Center filled 2 small rooms in a building on Corona Avenue in Elmhurst. And it was very tight, and yet Shifu held classes. We even had some retreats there. And we also received mailings from other centers. And I was taking in the mail, and I found a brochure from another meditation center. I have no memory which one it was. And I opened up the front cover, and there were listed the 6 paramitas: generosity, moral code of precepts, patience, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. And I thought, finally, it's something I could understand. I was so grateful for that. In fact, I don't remember Shufu's question, but my answer has a hint as to what he must have asked me. At some point, he must have asked me, "What are your words?" And I didn't know what he was asking me. But when I read these 6 paramitas, I went to Shufu and I said, "I have my words finally. I have my 6 words, these guidelines, these directions on how to approach the practice." And so from that point on, I was very, very connected to them and very consistent with them from that time. We apply our intention and taking on each quality and strengthening them. In order to do that, there's an exchange, a deal we make with ourselves to lessen attachment. To this, we might cringe. How am I going to do that? This may be a very hard part, to give up attachment. And yet these 6 paramitas are a very helpful practice that empower us in our daily practice and benefit others, as well as they decrease our hold on attachments. So that's the foundation of how they help me and why I'd like to share them. I do go to a meditation center in Fort Wayne. I'm there now. I'm in Indiana, but I'm not on the farm. I'm borrowing a house because the farm has no internet at times. And when I realized, oh my gosh, I can't bail on this, so I better borrow my partner's cousin's house. So I'm lower than I thought, and it's working out fine. But one of the teachers in this meditation center would often quote the Buddha. He would read from some sutras. And I was very impressed with that. And I would often comment to him that I was very glad that he brought the Buddha into the room. And that's why it's very important for me to focus on the words of the Buddha when he taught the paramitas. And this is from the prayer of Maitreya in the 41st chapter of the Ratnakuta Sutra. And it's at the very bottom. Since things do not exist as entities, may my wealth appear spontaneously. Since all things totally disintegrate, may I perfect the paramita of generosity. Endowed with a flawless ethics that is guided by rules, and an ethics that is completely pure, with an ethic free of an arrogant mind, may I perfect the paramita of ethics, the precepts. Just as the elements of earth, water, fire, and wind, bodhisattvas do not remain caught by mental constructs. By attaining patience, anger never arises. May I perfect the paramita of patience. Through the power of previous perseverance, having become stable, enthusiastic, and free of laziness, and through a strong body and mind, may I perfect the paramita of perseverance. Through the samadhi, where all is illusion-like, through the samadhi of the hero's stride, and through the samadhi that is like Vajra. May I perfect the paramita of meditative concentration. Through actualizing the three gates of full liberation and equal nature of the three times, and the three types of knowing as well, may I perfect the paramita of prajna, wisdom. The first paramita that we heard is called dana, generosity. And from Shifu's book, he mentions that some people feel, I can hardly help myself. How can I be generous to others? If I seek only for myself, the benefits are limited. Rewards are greatest when we strive to benefit others. It's considered the first step of liberation. This helps us transcend, go beyond our suffering. It's the easiest to fulfill. And we must recognize, however, there are two kinds. The two kinds of generosity, the first is generosity with intention. It tends to be a little bit self-serving, seeking reward, recognition, a little bit like an investment. And to tell you the truth, I think this one is what we mostly experience. I mean, how is it possible that we give something without that tiny wish to get something back, to do something and say, why is he saying thank you for what I've done for him so far? Things like that. I think it's bound to creep in, and it's not a problem as long as we're aware of it and as long as we are able to recognize it. Because the next is generosity without intention. It's not self-serving. It's giving not just money, but time and Dharma and example and helping others overcome fear. Aitken Roshi says, it's the hallmark of human maturity. That's amazing. It's the sign of our human maturity to be able to give generously. It strengthens the idea of readiness, being available. That's a very powerful word, to be available, to be alert on how it is that we can help in the smallest to grandest ways possible. Another word for the first great vow is, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. And that's saving and delivering. It's the practice of dana, is trust and respect, just as we are, as if we were perfected, and thus it is perfected. So even the intention of it, whether we feel we've accomplished, it doesn't matter. It's the motivation behind it, that idea of generosity. Many teachers that I've gone to, especially in the Western communities, they'll spend the full time just on dana. And it's important. It's very important. But I feel for this evening and for my own education, let's say, training, to keep all six together, because when we take the precepts, we do all of them, the 4 precepts, bodhisattva precepts, and the paramitas. We do all at one time. So that's why I feel it's not too much to handle, to listen to. The second paramita, shila. Shifu calls this the precept of morality, a moral foundation, refraining from harmful acts, cultivating virtue, and benefiting others. The precepts, as many of you may know, having taken them: no killing intentionally, no lying, no sexual misconduct, no stealing, no intoxicants or drugs. This sounds like renunciation, yet they strengthen the altruistic mind. That's another word that's very powerful to me. Altruism, the idea of service in our moment-to-moment lives, not just a volunteer on a Saturday morning or a commitment to an organization. It can be that moment-to-moment alertness where we're ready and ready and ready to help whatever comes up at the time. This altruism is a moral foundation. It's what builds what everything else is built on. Aitken Roshi says, however, if these don'ts and don'ts and don'ts sound so negative, he makes a suggestion. He advises that we add a phrase of our own to that interpretation of the vow. For example, I vow not to kill intentionally. I add the phrase, I support animals, people, plants, and the planet. This encourages our fulfillment of the vow. I take the vow of no lying. I support and respect others, that I speak truthfully and refrain from gossip. So you might consider this. When you're thinking of the vows of don't and I won't and won't, add that phrase of what it is that you will do, of what you will be guarding, protecting, enhancing. I think it's a wonderful suggestion. I went down through all the precepts and I thought for myself, how would I shift it around? No stealing. I respect the property of others. I will not take what is not given. I remember years ago reading, even using the company telephone. Some people would not even, that would be included. That would be, it's not my phone. I only use it for business. I once read of a young man who took a vow that he would never speak about anyone who wasn't in the room. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a high level of not gossiping or, it's the intention behind it, actually. I mean, it's not rigid, it's intention. He goes on to say, Aitken Roshi goes on to say that these guidelines are internalized and will be spontaneous. The Four Noble Truths are the highest and best of what we can inspire to. Consider, if the Buddha had been perfect, he would not have sat under the Bodhi tree. He continues, your manner and your words should be the expression of the Buddha's wisdom. Our manner and our words, the tone of our voice, the words we choose, are expressions of the Buddha's wisdom. We ourselves are conveying the Dharma in our behavior, in our punctuality, in our dress, in our devotion, in our work, and in our attention to others. This is what the precepts are about. This is what the second paramita encourages. Just consider those words again. Our behavior, our punctuality, the way we appear to people in our clothing, in our devotion to our work, to others around us. I mean, that's an everyday thing. And that's the beauty of the practice, that it's everyday things. It's not lofty and impossible. It's right in our everyday experience. It's very encouraging. The third paramita, khasanti, patience. According to Shifu, in the Sutra of the Perfection of Wisdom, this practice is called the pacified patience, peaceful. When there is patience, the mind is pacified, made peaceful, and not only the mind, but the body too. The body also will feel that well-being. So the mind and the body are connected. Just as we relax the body as a preparation for our meditation, that idea of patience, Not only is it in our attitude and in our behavior, but it helps with the body as well, the heartbeat, pulse, the adrenaline that goes through us. So it's a healthy measure. We recognize that without this patience, there are conflicts and obstacles, agitation, and turmoil. If we watch the news these last couple of days with the leaders at the UN, we wish we can give them a dose of these pacified patients. It's so lacking. I personally have trouble with this one too, I have to add. I have this strong sense of fairness, like, that's not fair. Let's see, I'm so straightforward. I'm connected through work and family and friends, and there's an expectation on my part that what I give, I'm going to get back, and that's impossible. So sometimes I get very impatient with just things as they arise, grandkid not listening, partner disappointing, memories changing of what should have been. So I get, a little bit, well, a lot of it frustrated. The thing is that no one will ever match us in action and intention. I mean, it's a hopeless battle to think that anyone's going to mirror the exact things that I value. It may be a disappointing imbalance, yet I can remain balanced in my own reaction. And this is very important. The world is not going to change. It's going to be spinning the way it does. The world of people in our lives will spin the way it does. But what I have control over, what we have control over, is our own balance, our own recognition. Shifu goes on to explain that there are two kinds of patience. There's the worldly and the world transcending patience. Worldly is coping with an environment, enduring the heat and the cold, the hunger, the thirst, the criticism, the physical and mental fatigue. These we recognize. These are everyday conditions that change as the seasons do, as the environment does, as the people we are, as they change. Even our own selves, day to day, within one day, we feel like different people, feeling fine, feeling low, feeling energetic, feeling fatigued. I mean, within a very short time, we're almost multiple people. So this is a worldly patience that we can, deal with. But then there's the world transcending patience that goes beyond these hardships. Imagine going beyond these hardships. It is the patience of integrating Dharma into our lives, accepting difficulties that come up with exertion and using our time wisely. Integrating, mixing Dharma into our lives, accepting the difficulties that come up with exertion and using time wisely. It's a long process. At times it may feel that the Dharma is not much help, but let's look at the Buddha. It took him 6 years of that patient practice of his own, and that's only part of the process that he went through. Dharma is not much help. Our meditation effort is weak and inconsistent, we think. Yet we keep coming back to our cushions. We attend lectures as we're doing tonight. We read Dharma. We transfer our merit. This is world transcending patience, the third paramita. So right now, together, this is an act of patience, transcending the world. He continues to say, the thing is that no one will match us in action and intention, at least not all the time. It may be a disappointing imbalance, yet as I mentioned earlier, I can remain balanced in my own response. It may be easy to say, yet there are moments of gathering our attention and choose the right response. Patience is one of those responses. Just about a week and a half ago, I was feeling pretty annoyed by a friend of mine, and I could feel that impatience rising in me. And fortunately, thank goodness, the word patience came to my mind, and I turned my back on the situation, almost turning my back physically on the frustration. And I said the word patience to myself, and I felt my face change. And of course, it was wonderful. The thing is, it doesn't always happen that patience comes to mind. But that's why when I mention this as part of daily practice, these words are said and repeated every day so that hopefully they do float to the top of the mind when the circumstance calls for it. And fortunately, I called for it and it helped. The fourth paramita is diligence, also perseverance, and it also goes by zeal. Shufu says that it's a kind of keenness, being keen, being sharp, without fear. And it's an antidote to laziness. What gives us that perseverance, that persistence, are the vows and our aspirations. So everything is linked, and I'll be getting to that in a few minutes. All 6 of the paramitas are incorporated. They all ladder into each other. They all blend into each other, one supporting the other. So the fact is that we all realize we can give excuses why we may skip meditating on a particular morning, a particular week. I'll get back to it next month, and not put too much effort into the method. So we may be sitting on the cushion every morning, every evening. Shifu always said it's a very good idea to practice a full hour in the morning and a full hour at nighttime. And so, yeah, okay, I'll listen, I'll do it. And yet not put much effort into the method, that's sort of contrary to what the teaching is, what the effort should be. So the perseverance is in the method, not just on the cushion. What creates a switch in attitude, in diligence, is because we reaffirm we are practicing not only for ourselves, but for the benefit of others. And this is the power of Mahayana Buddhism, that it's not a practice of just our own cultivation. It's a practice universal, an absolute instant sharing, even the scatteredness of it. The vows are behind us, the intentions are behind us, and the diligence. It lingers. It's a subtle perfume that embodies around us. Our faith makes that true, and our consistency, the diligence of our consistency. Shufu outlines that there are small, great, and ultimate vows. The small vows are just for today. It could also be like what we say about, all right, today I'll skip ice cream, something like that. Just a daily vow, very small. Then there's the great vow of a longer span, where we're consistent with ourselves, with whatever goal we have. And then there's the made continuously to attain Buddhahood for others. And that is the most powerful and the ultimate vow. And I think many of us have that in our hearts and in our practice, that we recite the 4 great vows and we mean them. And paramitas are these guidelines and energy that helps this all stay firm and strong. He also describes diligence as armor, like the metal that a knight would wear, that a soldier would wear. It's the fearless courage. One sees no enemies. One sees no problems. All impediments and difficulties are part of spiritual growth and learning. They're opportunities to enhance skills and profit from even the most difficult challenges. Over the years in retreat, Shufu mentioned that when he first studied with a master in Taiwan, the master said to him, "Oh, congratulations. You are a very famous monk. You have your PhD. You are now a doctorate as well. You have a doctorate. Let us give you the best room." And so Shifu brings his box of bushes and his bedding and all of this, unpacks it all. And a day or two later, the master comes and says, "No, I think this is not the right room for you. I wish you to go to another room." It turned out to be smaller, chillier, just didn't have the right conditions. So again, Shifu packs up his books, lugs them over to the new room, different room, unpacks, settles in. A few days pass, the same master comes by and says, "No, I really think I have given you the wrong room. Go back to that better room." This went on for a number of times. It was just laughable almost, frustrating certainly, but Shifu had trust. He knew that there was a reason, even though he couldn't quite get the reason right away, but he knew there was a reason that this was a training, that not adhering and getting attached to something that he was holding on to, but to see that that letting go and that movement was his training. And that was a very simple, easy to do packing of boxes and making up a new bed kind of difficulty. But, he had to face that a little bit of impatience and frustration. Why is my teacher doing this? And I think we can think of that too, when we, see that things just are not going according to how we feel they should be in relationships, with our health, with our jobs, the conditions of the world around us. It's just not the way we had imagined it. But as Shifu says, see no enemy, see no problem. All impediments and difficulties are part of the spiritual growth and learning. They're opportunities to enhance skills and profit from even the most difficult challenges. So these are the guidelines, maybe not for today, but maybe it can be brought to mind. So when something difficult does come up, we can be soft about it. Use the body, speech, and mind in the environment as opportunities to practice, instant to instant, moment to moment. This is genuine diligence. Shifu used the metaphor of a bus ride. Some practitioners separate their practice from their daily lives. And they say, well, I'll take the next bus, meaning later. Later I'll practice. Later I'll incorporate the precepts, or later I'll be a nicer person and incorporate the paramitas, practice them. Or in my next life, right, later, all later. But he cautions that the conditions may not arise. There may not be a next bus. So take every opportunity to practice. There's a kind of compassionate diligence, meaning to share. Sincere practitioners will be diligent in helping all sentient beings, not expecting anything in return, or impose or force ideas on anyone, but help them feel secure and at ease, with opportunities to learn on their own path. It's very subtle, but Shifu has said it kind of perfumes the room, the environment. People can sense that our own vows are present, whether we're speaking or not, whether we're acting or not. Aitken Roshi says that this diligence equals vitality, and vita, V-I-T-A, is the root of Latin meaning life. It's a single-minded spiritual vigor. This quality causes some questions to arise. How do I develop this quality? It's a busy world. How can diligence be maintained? And the answer is sticking to it. We have to decide to stick to it. It's a promise. It's a commitment. This diligence in terms of my daily practice became very important to me. Diligence in the sense of I would not let a day go by without practicing. I was a teacher for over 43 years, and the first 20 years were pretty easy because I was teaching adults, and adults were in school eager to learn. There was very little discipline problem. I didn't have to convince anybody to do their work. However, when I shifted to high school and middle school, I had to deal with that kind of behavior, you can imagine. And people said, I can't imagine how you do it. But I noticed that on the days that I meditated, there was a certain calmness to me, a certain available patience and spaciousness. And in fact, I put that word in my mind. Instead of yelling or asking them to be quiet, I would sit quietly and just imagine a spacious area around me and around them. And that helped a great deal. I would set my alarm earlier in the mornings, to wake up earlier. It meant telling my friends I'm off the phone at 10, watching fewer television shows at night, making sure I got to bed when I needed to. And this was very encouraging for me. I was diligent in sticking to the concept, the vow of a daily practice, because I saw that it had impact on other people. And that was very important. To yell at children, to be impatient, it's not the way. Especially after becoming a grandparent, I saw every child as part of my connection, and that was wonderful. Despite our inadequacies, despite the fact that we do lose patience, and despite the fact that we are missing maybe our practice on certain days, certain weeks, and certain months, we persevere. He suggests, what is my purpose? Everything follows from that advice, from that particular response. Ask yourself, what is my purpose? And the purpose matches the perseverance. How strong it is that you have that self-drive is as strong as you will stick to what is important to you. We can make small pledges to correct bad habits. We can write them on a card, an index card, a Post-it note, to remind and monitor spiritual training, taking our own practice as our own responsibility as a teacher for complete training. Practice is not just settled sitting and realization. It's studying, reading, note-taking, reflecting. It's all of that. It's a very active participation in our own nurturing and guiding, and it can be very, very, very beneficial. The third aspect is altruism, doing our best in all conditions. It's optimism and application and confidence that I can find and complete my own path, just like the Buddha himself had such great diligence. It's the strength of character that arises from meditation, realization, and service. And again, to say service doesn't mean volunteering on the weekends or working for some organization. Service is our moment-to-moment lives. It's the reflection of the precepts alive in us. Very encouraging. The fifth paramita, dhyana, meditation. Shifu describes 6 aspects of dhyana. The first is seeking, the starting point of practice, such as the simple method of focusing on counting the breath, just sort of a beginner's guidance, although Seasoned practitioners will use it too as a way of settling down. Next is that waiting, a state of stillness, staying focused moment to moment, where the mind does become clearer. We do see that silt, that river bottom settles as the mind settles. In third, fourth, and fifth is enjoyment, a kind of bliss, the bliss of oneness. This is a samadhi power, the bliss and oneness that one may experience, but the caution is not to be attached to it, to let it go. And the sixth leads to the seventh, putting down that leads to the seventh stage, supreme in the world. Imagine that title, supreme in the world. I mean, it's a nameless, it's a boundless, describeless mind or no mind. It's an unattached and fully engaged and alive. There are many gates of entry, and practicing in any situation, reading the sutras, prostration, walking meditation, puts one's mind fully concentrated on the task at hand. The idea is that life itself is Dharma, is this dhyana. Shifen often told us, relax, face life, deal with it, and then let it go. Relax, face it, deal with it, and then let it go. Right there is the nutshell of all those stages of meditation, of practice. Aitken Roshi says the image of the Buddha himself, as he sat in meditation, is our example of settled, focused mind. Yet, we, the students, must reinvent our own way. We must forge our own path. When distractions decrease, our long-lost hope is right there, not pushed around by our own voice of criticism and judgment. From ancient times, even the great masters faced the constant onslaught of thinking. It's hard to imagine. We think they almost came born perfect, accomplished. So easy did they have that encounter. But again, the great masters faced the constant onslaught of thinking. We start where we are. We learn to not grasp, not judge, not block anything. Settle in and keep relaxed. It's not so much an issue of whether we meditate, but how to meditate. With authenticity, with sincerity, the sincerity will build. With our character will build. How? With practice. The aim is to forget the sense of self. The release self is the unselfish self. That released self is the unselfish self. It generates loving kindness, compassion, joy, and balance. Religious practice could be austere meaning strict. It involves giving up many things. It's true. It's a certain lifestyle that we follow together with spouse, children, friends. It's the effort to live the simple way of integrity and honor. Character perfection is important. So who's in charge of that? I am with myself. You are with yourself. And with these guidelines, it's very doable. It's doable because it's subtle and steady. And we take on the mantle, we take on the cloth of our own responsibility to make this happen. I mean, at some point, we do say, it's up to me. The sixth paramita is wisdom. Shifu says that establishing and using a clear mind to handle situations appropriately. And all the paramitas must be included in one another. In other words, generosity is in all the other five. Patience is in all the other five. So again, that's what I did. And I encourage you, please, to take a piece of paper at some point and write down the paramitas: generosity, morality, patience, perseverance, meditation, and wisdom. And then see how generosity is patience, how you can be patient and generous in your patience. Perseverance, how you can return to the method moment to moment, which includes concentration, using the wisdom, the generosity of understanding, the persevering of going deeper. It's a very good exercise for you to use your own standard and see how you can apply all the paramitas into each other. Shifu stated, whenever you see or encounter, do not apply an interpretation or judgment to it. You are simply wisely aware that this and this and this is going on. Wisdom is not applied to solving our everyday problems, which are part of the limited mind. This wisdom, whoops, oh my gosh. Sorry. I'm getting closest to my keyboard. Sorry. Wisdom is spacious. That's right. Okay. Aitken Roshi says, this prajna is the potential in every one of us and must be cultivated. Without the practice of settled, focused meditation, realization is impossible. Without realization, the practice is dark, as in an unlit lamp or an unlit room. Generosity is the entry to Dharma, and all the paramitas are wisdom in alternate forms. That's magnificent. Generosity is the entry to Dharma, and all the other paramitas are wisdom in alternate forms. The language is very, very simple. The language is very, very encouraging. Despite all that confusion some years ago, when I heard that other kind of teachings, these kind are very everyday, very practical, very doable. And they encourage the responsibility that we ourselves take for that to happen. One of the things I like about Dharma is that we find it everywhere. I came across a cartoon in the Fort Wayne Gazette. It was not the New York Times, you can tell, or the Wall Street Journal, right? It's Pearls Before Swine. I think many of you know this, by Stephen Pastis, okay? And it shows in the first box a little brown box with a blue green lettering, and the box is called The Understander. It has the word understand in it, understander, ER. The next segment shows Pig in talking to his neighbor, and he says, "What's the matter, neighbor Nancy?" And the neighbor, this woman, is very, very angry, and she's pointing across the room. "That guy in the purple shirt down at the bar cut me off when I was turning into the parking lot. Now I want to pour a drink on his head." And Pig runs away and comes back, and he says, "Oh, it sounds like you need the understander." And she responds, "What's that?" And he says, he puts it down in front of her and he says, just press the button. So she presses the button, and all of a sudden a voice comes from this tiny box. The man down the bar lost a cousin last week. He wanted to fly to the funeral, but couldn't because he was laid off and didn't have the money. He normally discusses this sort of thing with his wife, but they recently separated, and he's trying to put his life back together. In the next frame, she sits there, wide-eyed, dumbfounded, silent. In the next frame, you see her next to the man in the purple shirt, next to the man who cut her off. And she says, everything will be okay. Which paramita is that? Generosity, wisdom, compassion, all the others. The idea of, and she might not have gone back to her drink. She might have given up that precept, given up the alcohol in terms of no more alcohol. But it ends with this. The little pig is holding his box and he says, I think it can save the world. And yes, understanding one another, understanding another's point of view, and relinquishing our solid, I'm only right point of view, that idea of patience, that idea of persistence and perseverance, of keeping an open present mind, is very understandable to be more of an understanding person. And I think that's the vow that we're taking, is to be understanding not only of the reality of what's going in ourselves, the reality of what we've signed up for when we've taken those vows, and the reality of how they can be applied, which is very, very beneficial in altruism, in generosity, and integrity. I've presented what's very close to my heart. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I would be so happy if all of us could share to some degree a question or how these things apply to you.